There's a moment in life when everything grows quiet, and in that stillness, a whisper rises from deep within you. It says, "You've been asleep, dreaming someone else's dream." Most of us are living like that, moving through our days without ever truly remembering who we are. We wake up, go through the motions, play the roles we've been given: parent, worker, friend, stranger. We wear names like labels and identities like masks. But beneath all of that, beneath the stories and the noise, there is something unchanging, something eternal, and somehow, we've forgotten it. Life has a way of making us forget. It's like stepping into a long, elaborate play and getting so caught up in the script that you mistake the character for yourself. You start to believe that this body, this history, this set of circumstances is all that you are. And yet, deep down, there's a quiet etch, a subtle longing, a question you can't quite put into words. Is this really me? From the beginning of time, there have been those who remembered, hidden away in ancient temples, secret circles, and mystery schools. They practiced a sacred technique, a key, not to teach you something new, but to help you remember. Because the truth is, you've never been lost. You've only been covered, like a mirror hidden beneath layers of dust. And when the dust is cleared, the reflection shines effortlessly. This technique is not about adding to yourself. It's about gently peeling away what isn't yours. Old beliefs, inherited fears, the heavy expectations of the world. When those layers fall, what remains is simple, rough, and unshakably real. You don't find yourself in this process. You remember yourself. And when that memory awakens, when you see clearly for the first time, the world around you shifts to meet you. There's nothing more threatening to systems of control than a soul that has awakened. A person who truly knows who they are cannot be manipulated by fear or controlled by false promises. That is why, for centuries, this technique was hidden, even forbidden. It was kept secret, passed down quietly, protected like a flame from the wind. Those in power understood it is easier to rule people who are asleep than to face individuals who are free. But here's the beautiful paradox: they can never fully erase this truth. Even when it's buried, it calls to you. Even when the world distracts you, some part of you knows. That's why you're here, listening to these words now. Because at some level, you've always felt it. There is more to you than what you've been told. Think of it like standing before a mirror. For years, you've seen only the masks reflected back: the dutiful child, the successful professional, the person trying so hard to be good enough. But beneath those masks is your original face, untouched by time or pain. The technique I'm speaking of isn't a set of steps or rituals. It's a way of wiping the glass clean so you can finally see yourself as you truly are. When that happens, something extraordinary occurs. You stop chasing. You stop searching for validation, love, or meaning outside yourself. The endless running, the grasping, the exhausting need to control it all begins to dissolve. Instead, you rest in the quiet, knowing that you've been whole all along. From that place of remembrance, your actions flow naturally, like a river that no longer has to fight to move upstream. It's not always an easy path. As the old layers fall away, the parts of you that have been buried, your unhealed wounds, your hidden fears may rise to the surface. It can feel messy, even painful, but this isn't punishment. It's liberation. It's the final clearing of what no longer belongs. The last clouds parting, so the sun can shine unobstructed. And when you stand in that light, the world itself begins to reflect your inner state. Relationships shift. Opportunities appear as if out of nowhere. Even the smallest details of life chance encounters, perfect timing, start to feel alive with meaning. Because when you remember who you are, Life remembers too. There's a reason we're having this conversation now. The world is changing. Old structures are breaking apart, and many people are feeling lost, anxious, or afraid. But beneath the chaos, there is a deeper movement, a quiet revolution of consciousness. Every time one person remembers who they are, they light a beacon for others. And slowly, those beacons connect, until the whole sky begins to glow. Today, I'm not here to hand you another belief system or to convince you of anything. I'm here to hold up that mirror, to remind you that everything you've been seeking is already within you. The love, the wisdom, the freedom, it's all there, waiting beneath the layers you've been carrying. So take a deep breath. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the quiet presence behind the noise of your thoughts. That presence, silent, steady, infinite, is who you really are. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to what has never left you. And when you do, when you finally remember, you'll see that the world has been whispering to you all along, patiently waiting for you to wake up. The journey doesn't begin by running towards something out there. It begins by turning inward, besoftening, by allowing yourself to see. And in that seeing, you'll realize the most profound truth. The universe is not outside of you. You are the universe, remembering itself through the beautiful, temporary form of you. When everything falls apart, you are being rearranged. There are moments in life when it feels like the ground beneath your feet has vanished. A relationship ends abruptly, leaving you with unanswered questions and an aching heart. A dream you poured your whole soul into suddenly collapses, leaving only the hollow echo of what could have been. A career path you thought was your calling disappears overnight, and you're left standing in the rubble of what you once believed was your future. In those moments, it's natural to feel lost, betrayed, or even punished. You may find yourself whispering into the silence, "Why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong?" It can feel as though life itself has turned against you, stripping away everything you worked so hard to build. I know this feeling well. I've been there, sitting alone in the darkness, surrounded by the fragments of a life that no longer made sense. And I want to tell you something I've learned from those times, a truth that only revealed itself after many tears and sleepless nights when everything is falling apart. It is not a punishment. It is a sacred rearrangement. The universe works in ways our minds cannot always understand. From where we stand, all we see are the pieces being scattered, the doors closing, the endings unfolding. It feels random, chaotic, even cruel. But from a higher vantage point, there is a pattern, just like an artist creating a mosaic. Life sometimes has to break apart the old pieces so they can be placed into a new, more beautiful design. Think of a jigsaw puzzle. When you're holding a single piece in your hand, you can't see how it fits into the whole picture. It just looks like a strange, awkward shape, meaningless on its own. But when the puzzle is complete, every piece has a perfect place. And you realize that even the ones that once seemed out of place were essential to the masterpiece. Your life is like that puzzle. The moments of loss, the heartbreaks, the sudden changes, they are pieces being moved into alignment. Even if you can't see the full picture yet, when a relationship falls apart, it's easy to believe it means you were unworthy of love. But what if that ending wasn't a rejection at all? What if it was the universe gently guiding you away from someone whose energy no longer matched yours, creating space for a deeper, truer connection to come into your life? When a dream shatters, it can feel like failure. You might think you wasted years chasing something that was never meant to be. But sometimes, the dream had to dissolve because it was too small for who you are becoming. Its ending clears the way for a vision far greater than the one you originally imagined. Even when it comes to career or purpose, the same truth applies. If a door closes, it doesn't mean you've been cast out. It means you're being redirected toward a path that is more aligned with your soul's growth, like a river that changes course to find its way to the ocean. You are being guided even when the current feels rough and confusing. I won't pretend this process is painless. The in-between space, the time after the old life has crumbled but before the new one has fully appeared, is one of the hardest places to stand. It feels uncertain, like walking through a dense fog with no map. But here's what I've discovered. The fog is fertile ground. It is the space where transformation takes root, even if you can't yet see the sprouts breaking through the soil. During my own darkest seasons, I began to notice something subtle but profound. Every time something fell away, a little more space opened up inside me. At first, that space felt like emptiness, like a void I didn't know how to fill. But with time, I realized that space wasn't empty at all. It was full of potential. It was where new dreams, new connections, and new ways of being could grow. The rearrangement of your life is like a great cosmic gardener at work. Sometimes, the weeds must be pulled up by the roots so that new seeds can flourish. The process may look destructive, but it is deeply intentional. Every ending is a beginning disguised as loss. Imagine a sculptor carving a statue from a block of marble. With each strike of the chisel, pieces of stone fall away. To someone watching from the outside, it might look like destruction, but to the sculptor, every strike is an act of creation, slowly revealing the beauty that was hidden inside all along. You are that marble. Life is the sculptor. The falling pieces are not your destruction, they are the unveiling of your truest self. So if you find yourself in a season where everything is unraveling, I invite you to take a deep breath and soften just a little. You don't have to understand the whole plan right now. You don't have to force yourself to be okay before you're ready. Simply allow yourself to trust that something larger is at work, even if you can't see it yet. The pain you feel is real, and it deserves to be honored. But beneath the pain, there is a quiet intelligence orchestrating every detail of your life. One day, you will look back on this chapter and see the beauty in the chaos. You will realize that what felt like breaking was actually becoming. What felt like loss was really alignment. And what felt like the end was, in truth, the tender beginning of something extraordinary. Until then, hold yourself gently, like a puzzle piece being placed in the grand design. You are exactly where you need to be, even if the picture hasn't fully revealed itself yet. Trust that every fall is a step toward wholeness, and every ending is an invitation to remember who you truly are. 2. The core of the technique. It's not about learning. It's about remembering. For much of our lives, we've been taught to believe that the path to freedom, peace, and self-discovery is about adding more information, more skills, more practices and rituals. We collect spiritual teachings, the way some people collect books, hoping that if we just read enough, pray enough, meditate enough, one day we'll finally arrive at the place where everything makes sense. But what if the truth isn't about adding anything at all? What if the real journey isn't outward but inward, not toward something new, but toward what has always been there, hidden beneath the noise? The sacred technique I'm sharing with you today begins with a radical idea: you don't need to learn who you are. You need to remember who you are. Think about that for a moment. When a baby is born, they are pure presence. They don't question their worth. They don't wonder if they're enough or compare themselves to others. They simply are. As they grow, layer by layer, the world begins to place ideas and labels upon them. You are good when you do this. You are bad when you do that. You must become this to be loved. You must hide that part of yourself to be accepted. Over the years, these messages accumulate like dust settling on a mirror. And just like a mirror covered in dust, you begin to forget that beneath all the layers, the reflection, the true self has been there all along, unchanged and perfect. The core of this technique is not about frantically polishing the mirror or forcing yourself to become something else. It's about gently wiping away the dust, allowing what has always been there to reveal itself. It's about unlearning rather than learning, letting go rather than grasping, softening rather than striving. This process doesn't happen through thought alone. In fact, the mind often gets in the way. Our thoughts are like 1,000 voices speaking at once, each trying to tell us who we are, what we should fear, and how we must behave. The mind loves to analyze, to dissect, to control, but this remembrance we're talking about cannot be grasped by logic alone, because it's not a concept, it's an experience, a direct knowing. Imagine trying to explain the taste of honey to someone who has never tasted sweetness before. You could describe it endlessly, but until they take a drop on their tongue, they won't truly understand. The same is true here. You can read spiritual books for a lifetime and never come close to the living experience of remembering your true essence. This is why the technique focuses on vibration rather than thought. Everything in existence vibrates at a certain frequency: your body, your emotions, even your thoughts. When you are caught in fear, shame, or anger, your vibration becomes dense and heavy, like a storm cloud. When you are aligned with love, peace, and presence, your vibration rises, becoming lighter and clearer, like a sunlit sky. The remembrance of who you truly are happens naturally when you reach this higher frequency. It's like tuning a radio. When you adjust the dial to the right station, the static fades, and suddenly the music comes through, clear and beautiful. Your true self is always broadcasting, always sending out its signal. The only reason you can't hear it is because you've been tuned to the wrong frequency, lost in the static of fear and conditioning. When you align with the correct vibration, the lies dissolve effortlessly, just like morning mist, melting away under the gentle warmth of the sun. You don't have to fight the lies or wrestle with them. You don't have to convince yourself to believe the truth. The moment you step into that frequency, falsehoods simply cannot survive. I remember a time in my own life when I was drowning in self-doubt. I kept searching for external answers, reading book after book, asking teachers for guidance, chasing after the next practice or method. It was exhausting. And then one day, in a moment of stillness, something shifted. I wasn't thinking or analyzing. I was simply breathing, quietly present with myself. And in that silence, I felt a souple hum, a sense of deep recognition rising from within. It was as if a veil had been lifted. I didn't figure out who I was, I remembered. The knowing was wordless, indéniable, and profoundly freeing. That moment taught me something invaluable. The truth doesn't need to be forced. It reveals itself when you create space for it. So how do we create that space? Through presence, through releasing rather than adding, through practices that help you attune to your natural vibration, whether it's conscious breathing, quiet reflection, or simply watching the play of thoughts without clinging to them. This is not about perfection. It's not about erasing every negative thought or emotion. It's about noticing when you've been swept away by the noise of the world and gently returning to the stillness beneath it. Like a river finding its way back to the ocean, you simply keep returning, over and over, until that return becomes effortless. As you spend more time in this state, you'll begin to notice subtle but powerful changes. The heavy stories you've carried for years will start to feel less solid. The critical voices in your head will soften. You may even look at yourself in the mirror and see, perhaps for the first time, the unchanging presence that has been with you since birth. And here's the most beautiful part. This remembrance doesn't just change how you see yourself. It changes how you see the entire world. When the dust clears from your inner mirror, you begin to recognize the same light shining in everyone around you. Even those who once triggered your pain now appear as reflections, fellow travelers, who are also struggling to remember their own essence. The core of this technique is breathtakingly simple, yet profoundly transformative. You don't need to strive or struggle. You don't need to add anything to who you are. You only need to create space, to tune into the frequency of truth, and to allow the false to fall away. Because when the false dissolves, what remains is who you've always been: timeless, whole, and free. And in that moment of remembrance, you'll realize something extraordinary. You were never broken, never incomplete, never truly lost. You were always here, quietly waiting for yourself to come home. 3. Awakening the inner senses. There is a quiet world within you, a world that has always been there, patiently waiting beneath the noise of your thoughts and the demands of the outer world. Most of us are so caught up in survival, in schedules, in constant motion, that we rarely pause long enough to notice it. It's like standing beside a vast, the beautiful ocean, and never realizing that if you stood still and listened, you would hear the gentle rhythm of the waves. Your inner senses are like that ocean. They are subtle, delicate, and easily drowned out by the loud chatter of the mind. But when you slow down, when you soften, and allow yourself to become present, those inner senses begin to awaken, and with them comes a deeper understanding of who you truly are. For much of my life, I lived disconnected from this part of myself. I trusted only what I could see and touch, dismissing the quiet nudges of intuition as just imagination. But over time, through pain, stillness, and many nights of soul-searching, I began to notice that there was a deeper intelligence whispering beneath the surface. The challenge wasn't that it wasn't speaking, the challenge was that I wasn't listening. When you are in a state of stillness, something magical happens. Your breath slows. Your body begins to release its tension. The swirling chaos of your thoughts gradually settles, like mud sinking to the bottom of a clear pond. And in that clarity, you start to perceive things you couldn't before. These inner signals may come as images, as sensations, or as sudden knowings that seem to appear from nowhere. Perhaps you see a fleeting picture in your mind's eye, a memory that doesn't seem to belong to your current life. Perhaps you feel a subtle tightening in your chest when you meet someone whose energy isn't aligned with yours. Perhaps you hear a gentle inner voice, offering guidance in a moment of uncertainty, a voice softer, but infinitely wiser than the constant commentary of your ego. At first, these experiences may feel strange or even unreal. The mind, trained to analyze and categorize, might dismiss them as fantasy. But here's the truth. What you call imagination is often the language of the soul. Think of a dream. When you are asleep, your subconscious communicates through images, symbols, and feelings. It doesn't speak in sentences or rational explanations. Yet the meaning is deeply personal and profound. Your inner senses work the same way when you are awake. The soul doesn't shout. It whispers in metaphors, in subtle nudges, in patterns that repeat until you finally pay attention. Breathing deeply and slowly is one of the simplest, most powerful ways to awaken these senses. Each inhale draws you inward, like a gentle wave returning to the shore. Each exhale releases tension, fear, and the layers of distraction that keep you from hearing your truth. As your breath steadies, your awareness expands, and you begin to feel more fully present in your body. This presence acts like a key, unlocking doors within you that have been closed for far too long. The more you practice this presence, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you will start to recognize the difference between the frantic voice of the ego and the calm, steady voice of the soul. The ego speaks in urgency and fear. Hurry up. Don't fail. You need to control this. The soul, by contrast, speaks in a quiet knowing. You are safe. You already know. Just trust. At first, it may feel difficult to distinguish between the two. But with practice, the soul's voice becomes unmistakable, like the gentle hum of a song you've always known but forgotten how to sing. As these inner senses awaken, you will find yourself more attuned to the subtleties of life. You may notice synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. You may feel the unspoken emotions of those around you, sensing what is true even when words are not spoken. You may begin to receive guidance that seems to come from nowhere, yet proves to be profoundly accurate. This is not about becoming psychic in the way movies portray it. It's about returning to your natural state of connection. Every living being has this capacity. It is as natural as sight or hearing, but it has been neglected because we live in a world that values logic and external proof above all else. I remember the first time I truly trusted my inner senses. It was a quiet evening, and I was sitting alone, breathing, and simply being present. Suddenly, an image flashed in my mind, a person I hadn't spoken to in years. Someone I deeply cared for, but had lost touch with. There was no reason for me to think of them at that moment. Yet the feeling was so strong I couldn't ignore it. I reached out to them, and later discovered they were going through one of the most difficult times of their life. That connection, that moment of listening, changed everything for both of us. Experiences like this remind us that we are deeply interconnected. Our inner senses are the threads that weave us into the larger fabric of existence. When we awaken to them, we don't just connect with ourselves, we connect with others, with the world, and with the greater intelligence that flows through all things. The key is to approach this process with gentleness and curiosity. If you push or force, you create resistance. But if you soften and allow, the inner world opens naturally, like a flower blooming in its own time. The more you honor these subtle signals, the stronger they become. Like a muscle that grows with use, your intuition will flourish the more you listen. Remember, this is not about escaping reality or retreating into fantasy. It's about expanding your perception so that you can see more of reality than before. It's about understanding that there are layers of truth beneath the surface, and that your soul has been speaking to you all along. So, take a breath, close your eyes, notice the sensations in your body, the rise and fall of your chest, the quiet space between thoughts. In that stillness, listen closely. Your inner senses are awakening, and through them, your soul is speaking. What you once dismissed as mere imagination is, in fact, the deepest truth of who you are, patiently waiting to be heard. 4. The greatest fear, facing yourself. There comes a moment on the path of awakening when the light begins to shine. And for the first time, you start to remember who you truly are. It's beautiful at first. There's a sense of clarity, a glimpse of something pure and unshakable within you. But then, just as the light grows brighter, so too does the shadow it casts. And suddenly, the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime hiding come rushing to the surface. This is the moment so many people turn back, because when we begin to truly remember, we don't only remember the love and the peace, we also remember the pain, the unhealed wounds, the anger we buried, the guilt we've carried like a heavy stone. These parts of us don't appear to punish us, they appear to be healed. But in the beginning, it doesn't feel like healing, it feels like chaos. It feels like everything you've avoided is now standing in front of you, asking to be seen. I've lived through this myself. There was a time when I thought spiritual awakening meant constant serenity, endless positivity, a smooth and easy journey upward into the light. But when I began to truly awaken, I discovered that before you rise, you must descend. Before you become whole, you must meet the parts of yourself you've tried to forget. Imagine a house with many rooms. Some rooms are filled with light, warm and welcoming, places you show proudly to guests. But there are other rooms you've locked and sealed long ago. Rooms filled with old memories, painful moments, and things you'd rather not face. As long as those rooms stay locked, you never have to deal with them, but you also never feel completely at home in your own house. When the light of awareness begins to spread, those doors start to creak open, and what you find inside may frighten you at first. There might be anger you thought you'd outgrown, grief you told yourself you'd gotten over, or shame, so deep you couldn't even put it into words. These are the shadows, the parts of you that were pushed down, not because they were evil, but because at some point in your life, you didn't have the strength or the safety to face them. It's natural to want to slam those doors shut again, to distract yourself, to run away, to deny what's coming up. But here's the truth. What you resist doesn't disappear. It just waits. It waits for the next opportunity to rise, to be felt, to be healed. Facing yourself is not about judgment. It's not about labeling parts of you as good or bad. It's about seeing clearly. It's about holding every part of you, the beautiful and the broken, in the same compassionate embrace. When you first begin to sit with your pain, it may feel unbearable. Your mind will tell you that you're going to drown in it, that if you allow yourself to really feel, you'll never stop crying, never stop hurting. But, like all things, moves when it's given space. When you meet it with presence, it begins to soften. It begins to flow. Think of it like holding a child who has been crying alone in the dark. At first, the child thrashes and screams, terrified and angry. But if you stay, if you hold them gently without trying to silence or fix them, eventually the sobbing slows. The child begins to trust, begins to feel safe, begins to release. Your inner wounds are like that child. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be held. This is why compassion is essential. Without compassion, we turn our healing into another battlefield. We try to conquer our anger, defeat our sadness, banish our fear. But these are not enemies to fight. They are messengers, each carrying a piece of your truth. When you listen instead of fight, you begin to understand what they've been trying to tell you all along. For me, one of the hardest parts of this process was facing my own anger. I had spent years pretending to be calm, kind, and forgiving. I told myself anger was wrong, that spiritual people didn't feel rage. But beneath the surface, that anger boiled, shaping my actions in ways I didn't even realize. The day I finally allowed myself to feel it, not to act it out, but to simply sit with it, was the day everything began to change. I discovered that beneath the anger was hurt, and beneath the hurt was love. By facing it, I didn't just release the anger. I reclaimed a lost piece of myself. This is the paradox when you face your shadow with compassion. It transforms. The very things you once feared become sources of strength. Your grief becomes a gateway to deeper love. Your shame becomes a bridge to humility and connection. Your anger becomes fuel for change and clarity. It's important to remember that this is not a one-time event. The process of facing yourself unfolds in layers. You don't need to rip the doors off every locked room at once. You can move slowly, gently, at the pace your soul is ready for. Each time you turn toward a part of yourself you once rejected, you bring more light into your inner house. And gradually, the whole home becomes a place of warmth and wholeness. When you avoid facing yourself, you live divided. Part of you moves forward, while another part lingers in the past, stuck in old wounds and unfinished stories. But when you integrate those lost parts, you become unified. You feel a sense of inner harmony that no external achievement can ever match. So if you find yourself in a season where old pain is rising, where shadows seem to be closing in, take heart. This is not a punishment. This is a profound invitation. It is life offering you the chance to come home to yourself. In the end, the greatest fear we all carry is not of failure, or rejection, or even death. The greatest fear is of truly seeing ourselves, the light and the shadow, the beauty and the mess, the wholeness and the wounds. But here's the secret: when you face yourself fully, you discover there was never anything to fear. Beneath it all, you are not broken. You are not unworthy. You are vast, radiant, and whole. And the moment you embrace every part of yourself with compassion, the moment you stop running and start holding, you step through a doorway into freedom. A doorway that has been waiting for you all along. 5. Ancient origins, and the reason it was forbidden. There is a certain weight to ancient wisdom, a kind of quiet truth that transcends time. Long before our modern world of noise, technology, and constant distraction, there were civilizations that understood life in a way we have almost entirely forgotten. They did not see human beings as separate from the divine or from nature. They knew that within every person, there was a vast and eternal essence, a soul that existed long before birth and would continue long after death. In those early times, there were sacred practices designed to help people remember who they truly were. These practices were not casual or superficial. They were held in the deepest reverence, carried out in temples and mystery schools, and guarded by those who understood their profound power. To experience them was to step into a different world, a world where the boundaries between the seen and the unseen dissolved, and where you could glimpse the eternal truth of your being. In ancient Egypt, for instance, initiates were guided through a symbolic death. They would enter dark chambers deep within the pyramids, lying in silence, fasting and meditating, as they were led through rituals meant to strip away their attachment to the physical body. The goal was not to frighten them, but to awaken them. By facing a death while still alive, they discovered that their essence was far greater than flesh and bone. When they emerged, they were reborn, not physically, but spiritually, knowing with unshakable certainty that they were eternal. In India, there was the concept of smirana, which means sacred remembrance. This wasn't about learning something new or adopting an outside belief system. It was about going inward, diving deep into the silence of one's own being, and remembering the truth that had always been there. Through meditation, mantra, and breathwork, practitioners would gradually dissolve the layers of illusion until only pure awareness remained. In that state of remembrance, they experienced the divine not as something distant or separate, but as the very core of their being. In Greece, the mystery schools carried this same thread of wisdom. These were places hidden away from the masses, accessible only to those prepared to undergo profound transformation. Through rhythmic breathing, sacred chanting, and altered states of consciousness, students were guided into realms beyond the physical senses. Here, they encountered visions, archetypes, and truths that revealed the interconnectedness of all life. To graduate from these schools was to awaken not just intellectually, but at the deepest level of the soul. Across cultures, though the methods differed, the essence was the same: to awaken the inner self and remember the eternal truth. These practices were not just spiritual, they were revolutionary. Because when a person remembers who they are, they can no longer be manipulated by fear. They stop blindly obeying authority. They become sovereign, guided by an inner wisdom that no external power can control. And this is where the story begins to shift. As societies grew larger and more complex, systems of power began to form. Kings, priests, rulers. They all discovered that people who were deeply awake were very difficult to govern. A person who knows their own infinite nature cannot be threatened into obedience or tempted by empty promises. They see through the illusions of control. Slowly, quietly, the sacred practices began to disappear from public life. Some were hidden away, kept alive in secret by small groups of initiates. Others were distorted, turned into hollow rituals that people performed without understanding their original purpose. And some were outright forbidden, condemned as dangerous, heretical, or even evil. This was not because the practices themselves were harmful, but because they were too liberating. Imagine a world where every person truly remembered their divine essence. Who would wage wars if they saw their supposed enemy as another expression of the same infinite consciousness? Who would hoard wealth if they knew they were already whole and complete? Who would bow to a tyrant if they understood that no external authority could define their worth? Those in power realized that it was far easier to control people who were asleep than those who were awake. And so, over time, a veil was drawn over this ancient wisdom. Stories were rewritten. Symbols were reinterpreted. Fear was used as a weapon. Fear of punishment. Fear of hell. Fear of the unknown. Instead of being taught to look within, people were taught to look outside themselves, to give their power away to priests, rulers, and institutions. Even today, you can see traces of this forgetting. Many of our modern systems are built on the same foundation: keep people distracted, divided, and afraid. And they will never discover the freedom that lies within them. They will chase external solutions forever, never realizing that the key has always been inside. But here is the beautiful truth: no matter how deeply it has been buried, this wisdom cannot be destroyed. It is woven into the fabric of existence itself. It lives in our myths, in our dreams, in the quiet moments when we sense that there is more to life than what we've been told. It is in you, right now, waiting to be remembered. The reason this ancient technique feels so familiar when you hear about it is because, at some level, your soul already knows it. You've walked this path before, perhaps in another lifetime, perhaps in ways you cannot logically explain. The remembrance is not new, it is a returning. And this is why, even though the outer world may try to keep you asleep, there comes a moment when something within you stirs. A whisper, a dream, a flash of insight. You begin to feel the call to wake up, to peel back the layers, to see clearly. This call is stronger than fear, stronger than conditioning, stronger than any attempt to suppress it. Yes, the technique was hidden. Yes, it was forbidden, but it has never been truly lost. It lives in you, and in anyone who dares to look inward with courage and love. When you begin to remember, you are not just healing yourself. You are carrying forward the legacy of countless souls who held this truth in secret, waiting for the time when it could once again be shared openly. And as you awaken, you add your light to theirs, helping to illuminate the path for others who are still finding their way. This is how the cycle of forgetting ends, not through force or rebellion, but through remembrance, one soul at a time, quietly, courageously, remembering. 6. Living as if you have already remembered. There is a beautiful misunderstanding many of us carry on our spiritual journey. We believe that awakening is some distant mountain peak, something we must strive toward with years of effort, meditation, and study before we can finally live authentically. We tell ourselves, when I am fully enlightened, then I will speak my truth. Then I will love freely. Then I will live with presence and grace. And so we wait. We keep postponing life, believing that the real version of ourselves will only appear sometime in the future. But here's the quiet truth: you don't have to wait to remember who you are. You don't need to reach some perfect state of awakening before you begin to live as your true self. The doorway is always here, in this very moment, waiting for you to step through. Think of it like learning to play a song on an instrument. You don't wait until you've mastered every note to start playing. You simply begin, imperfectly at first, letting the music guide you. And with time, the melody becomes clearer, more natural. Living authentically works the same way. Each moment is a chance to play a single note of truth, to practice being who you already are at the deepest level. So how do you begin? You begin by acting as if you have already remembered. Not pretending, not forcing, but gently aligning yourself with the vibration of your soul, even if you don't fully feel it yet. It's like tuning a radio. At first, there may be static, a mix of clarity and noise. But as you keep turning the dial, the signal grows stronger, until the music of your true self fills the room. Start with the simplest of things. When you speak, let your words arise from a place of stillness rather than reactivity. Pause before you respond, even if only for a breath. Feel the quiet space within you and allow that space to shape what you say. Words spoken from stillness carry a different energy. They don't just communicate ideas. They transmit presence. When you love, love without conditions. This doesn't mean you allow others to harm you or ignore your boundaries. It means you give love as freely as the sun gives light, without keeping score or holding back out of fear. When you love without expectation, you tap into the boundless well of love that already exists within you. You discover that love isn't something you need to get from the outside. It's who you are. Bring this same awareness into the small, ordinary moments of your day. When you eat, taste each bite fully, as if the entire universe were contained in that one moment of nourishment. When you walk, feel the ground supporting you. Notice the rhythm of your steps, the movement of air against your skin. When you breathe, really breathe slowly, deeply, with gratitude for the life moving through you. These simple acts, when infused with presence, become sacred rituals. They anchor you in the truth of the moment, reminding you that enlightenment isn't found somewhere else. It's here, now, in the way you live. I remember a time in my own life when I was waiting for some dramatic awakening to change everything. I thought there would be fireworks, a grand revelation that would suddenly make me whole. But what actually happened was much quieter. One day, while washing dishes, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The warm water on my hands, the light coming through the window. The simple act of cleaning suddenly, it all felt complete. There was no separation between me and the moment. And in that ordinariness, I realized that I didn't have to wait for a special experience to be free. Freedom was already here, in the way I chose to meet life. When you live as if you have already remembered, something profound begins to unfold. You stop looking outside yourself for confirmation or proof. Instead of waiting for the world to reflect your worth, you start radiating it from within. This creates a powerful shift. The more you align with your soul's frequency, the more the outer world rearranges to match it. Synchronicities appear, opportunities flow effortlessly. Relationships deepen or dissolve in ways that support your growth. It's as if life itself begins to conspire with you, guiding you gently toward your highest expression. Of course, there will still be challenges. Living this way doesn't mean you'll never feel pain or face difficulties. But even in those moments, you will respond differently. Instead of collapsing into old patterns of fear or resistance, you'll meet the challenge with curiosity and openness. You'll see it as part of the larger dance, an invitation to embody your truth even more fully. There's a subtle but important shift that happens when you choose to live this way. You stop chasing awakening as if it were some future destination. Instead, you realize that awakening is not a goal. It's a practice. It's the way you show up to this moment. And then the next. And then the next. It's not about perfection. It's about presence. The mind will try to complicate this. It will tell you that you're not ready, that you need more preparation, more study, more healing before you can truly live as yourself. But the soul whispers something different. It says, begin now, right here, as you are. The beauty of living as if you've already remembered is that, over time, it stops being as if. What begins as a practice gradually becomes your natural state. Just as a river doesn't need to force itself to flow, you begin to live from your essence, effortlessly. The past loses its grip, the future loses its weight, and you find yourself deeply at home, in the present moment. In the end, remembering isn't a sudden event, it's a way of being. Each breath, each step, each word spoken from love and awareness is a thread weaving you back into wholeness. As you live this way, the memories of your soul will naturally rise to the surface. Like treasures uncovered by a gentle tide, you will realize that you never truly lost yourself. You were only waiting for the right moment to awaken. So don't wait for some future version of you to start living fully. Speak from stillness. Love without conditions. Bring presence into the smallest acts of your day. And as you do, you will find that the life you've been longing for has been here all along, quietly waiting for you to live it. 7. The practice of silence, where the technique begins to bloom. True silence is not simply the absence of sound. It is the absence of noise within the quieting of the endless chatter of the mind, the softening of the constant inner commentary that pulls you away from the present moment. You can be sitting in a perfectly silent room and still be surrounded by chaos if your thoughts are racing, colliding, demanding your attention. And you can stand in the middle of a noisy city street and still touch a profound silence if, for even a breath, you rest deeply in yourself. Silence is not about shutting out the world. It is about opening a space inside where you can finally hear what has always been speaking. It is about coming home to the stillness beneath the storm, like the calm, unmoving center of a hurricane. For most of us, this inner silence feels foreign at first. We are so used to being consumed by our thoughts, swept up in planning, worrying, replaying old conversations, or rehearsing future ones. The mind has been trained to be loud. It thrives on distraction and noise. That is why, when you first sit in stillness, you may feel restless, even uncomfortable. It can feel as though the noise grows louder the moment you try to quiet it. But this is where the practice begins. Like muddy water settling when it is left undisturbed, your mind gradually begins to clear when you simply sit and allow it to be. You don't have to fight the thoughts or push them away. You don't need to force silence to happen. Your only task is to be present, to notice without judgment, to breathe, to soften, and to wait. At first, it might feel like nothing is happening. You might think, I'm just sitting here, doing nothing. But in that nothing, profound transformation is taking place. Beneath the surface, something ancient begins to stir. The layers of noise and conditioning that have covered your soul for so long begin to loosen, like old leaves falling away in autumn. And slowly, a whisper emerges, a voice so quiet and familiar that you realize it has been there all along, patiently waiting for you to listen. This is where the technique begins to bloom, not with dramatic visions or mystical fireworks, but with the gentle return of remembrance. It comes like cool water seeping into dry earth, subtle, nourishing, and deeply restorative. There is no rush, no urgency, no need to grasp for more. In this space, your soul remembers in its own timing, like a flower opening when the sun rises. I remember the first time I truly experienced this kind of silence. I had been chasing answers for so long, reading books, seeking teachers, filling my mind with ideas. I thought if I just gathered enough information, I would finally feel at peace. But all that knowledge only added to the noise. One evening, exhausted and desperate, I sat down with no plan, no mantra, no agenda. I simply breathed. At first, my mind screamed at me, throwing out thoughts and fears like a wild animal trapped in a cage. But I stayed. I breathed. And slowly, like the tide pulling back from the shore, the noise began to recede. In that space, I felt something rise within me. Not a thought, not a voice, but a knowing, It was quiet, steady, and utterly undeniable. And it said, "You have never been lost. You have simply been too loud to hear yourself." That moment changed everything. It taught me that silence is not empty. It is full of presence, full of truth, full of the memories your soul has been carrying for lifetimes. And it reminded me that the answers we seek are rarely outside of us. They are waiting in the quiet spaces we so often avoid. When you begin to make silence a regular part of your life, you start to notice subtle shifts. You become less reactive, less driven by old patterns. Your words become more deliberate, carrying the weight of presence rather than the impulse of emotion. Even the way you move through the world changes. Ordinary moments, a sip of tea, the sound of wind through the trees, the rhythm of your own breath begin to feel sacred, alive with meaning. This doesn't mean you have to retreat to a monastery or live in complete seclusion. Silence is not about isolating yourself from life. It's about learning to bring that inner stillness into the midst of life's noise. You can practice it while washing dishes, walking through a busy street, or listening to someone speak. The key is not what's happening around you, but what's happening within you. In the beginning, it may help to set aside dedicated time each day, even if it's just 5 minutes, to sit quietly and breathe. Think of it like watering a young plant. The more consistently you nurture it, the more it grows. Over time, you'll find that silence starts to appear on its own, like a trusted friend who walks beside you no matter where you are. As your connection to silence deepens, you'll begin to experience life differently. Challenges that once felt overwhelming become opportunities to return to stillness. Conversations that used to drain you become chances to listen deeply, both to others and to yourself. And moments of chaos transform into gateways of peace. Because you've discovered that silence isn't something you visit, it's something you carry within you. The beauty of this practice is that it's endlessly gentle. There's no way to fail at it. Even if your mind is noisy, even if you spend the whole time lost in thought, the act of showing up, of sitting, breathing, and choosing presence is enough. Each time you return, you strengthen the bridge between your outer life and your inner world. Eventually, silence stops being something you do. It becomes who you are. Like a tree rooted deeply in the earth, you move through storms without being shaken. Because your foundation is unshakable. The world can be loud, chaotic, and unpredictable. But inside, there is always a still point of clarity. And it's from that still point that remembrance flows. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in the quiet way that truth always reveals itself. Like water nourishing the roots of a plant, silence feeds the soul, bringing it back to life, back to wholeness, back to the memory of who you've always been. So, find your way into the quiet, not to escape the world, but to meet it more fully, not to shut out life, but to hear it more clearly. Sit, breathe, and listen, not for something extraordinary, but for the simplicity of your own being. There, in the gentle hum beneath all things, you will find the doorway to remembrance. And as you step through, you'll realize that silence was never just an absence of sound. It was the language of your soul, patiently waiting to be heard. Wheat, connecting with your unique frequency. Every soul carries a unique frequency, a subtle vibration as distinct and unrepeatable as a fingerprint. It's like a song that belongs only to you, a melody woven from every lifetime you've lived, every lesson you've learned, and every truth you've ever held in your heart. Even before you were born into this body, this song was playing softly in the background of existence, waiting for the moment you would remember it. Most of us, however, grow up in a world filled with noise. From the moment we take our first breath, we are surrounded by other people's expectations, beliefs, and fears. We are told who we should be, what we must strive for, how we must act in order to belong. And slowly, without realizing it, we begin to tune our inner instrument to match the frequencies around us. We try to sing other people's songs, thinking they will bring us acceptance, safety, or love. But no matter how perfectly we imitate, no matter how hard we try to harmonize with the world's demands, something inside us feels off. It's like playing a beautiful instrument that has been tuned incorrectly. No matter how skilled the musician, the sound never feels quite right. This misalignment creates a quiet ache, a subtle longing for something we can't quite name. Deep down, a part of us knows, this isn't my true song. The journey of spiritual remembrance is, in many ways, a journey of tuning back to your original frequency. It's not about adding anything new or proving anything to anyone. It's about peeling away the layers of noise and illusion until, finally, the pure tone of your soul can ring out clearly again. Imagine for a moment that you are a radio receiver. When you are tuned to the wrong station, all you hear is static, fragmented bits of sound, confusing and chaotic. You might strain to make sense of it, but no matter how hard you listen, it never feels coherent. But when you turn the dial to the exact right frequency, the static disappears. The music comes through effortlessly, perfectly clear, as if it was always meant to be there. This is what happens when you reconnect with your soul's frequency. Suddenly, life itself begins to feel harmonious. Even when challenges arise, there's a sense of natural alignment, like the pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. When you resonate with your true frequency, you no longer have to force things to happen. You don't need to chase love, success, or meaning. You don't need to manipulate circumstances or try to control every detail of life. Instead, life begins to move toward you, naturally and gracefully, because you are vibrating at the level of truth. Opportunities, relationships, and insights flow to you without effort, like rivers flowing downhill, guided by gravity alone. This is why so many spiritual traditions speak of surrender, not as giving up, but as tuning in. When you are aligned with your unique frequency, you become a magnet for everything that truly belongs to you. And just as importantly, what no longer matches your vibration begins to fall away. People, situations, and beliefs that once seemed essential may dissolve from your life. At first, this can feel painful, like losing parts of yourself. But in time, you see that these were never truly yours. They were simply the background noise that kept you from hearing your own song. I remember a time when I was deeply out of tune with myself. I was living according to others' expectations, saying yes when my heart was screaming no, pursuing goals that didn't resonate with my soul. On the outside, everything looked fine, but inside, I felt hollow, as if I were playing a role in someone else's play. The turning point came, not through a dramatic event, but through quiet moments of listening. Little by little, I began to hear the faint strains of my own inner music. It was so subtle at first, almost imperceptible. But as I gave it my attention, it grew louder. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore. Following that inner sound required courage. It meant making changes, setting boundaries, and letting go of certain illusions. But with every step, I felt more alive, more whole, more me. Your frequency is not something you have to create. It's something you have to uncover. And one of the most powerful ways to do this is through stillness. When you sit quietly, breathing deeply, and simply allow yourself to be, the noise of the external world begins to fade. In that quiet, you may notice subtle sensations, images, or feelings rising to the surface. These are the first hints of your soul's song making itself known again. Pay attention to what brings you peace and vitality. Notice the activities, environments, and people who make you feel expansive, like you can breathe more freely. These are clues that you are resonating with your true frequency. Likewise, notice what feels heavy, constricting, or draining. This isn't about judging those experiences as bad, but about recognizing that they are out of alignment with who you really are. As you continue to align with your unique frequency, you may experience moments of profound clarity. A memory might surface not necessarily from this lifetime, but from the timeless realm of your soul. A sudden knowing may arise, unexplainable yet deeply true, like remembering a song you haven't heard in years. In these moments, you realize something breathtaking. This is me. I was never truly lost. I only forgot for a while. The more you live in harmony with your frequency, the more effortless life becomes. Challenges still come, but they no longer feel like punishment. They become opportunities to refine your vibration. Like a musician, tuning their instrument a little more perfectly each day. Even the difficulties serve a purpose. They help you hear your own song more clearly by showing you where you've been playing someone else's tune. Eventually, living in this alignment becomes second nature. You stop asking, "Am I on the right path?" because you feel the rightness in every step. You stop searching for external signs because the guidance arises from within, clear and unwavering. Your actions, words, and choices flow from a place of deep authenticity, and the world around you responds in kind. This is the true magic of reconnecting with your frequency. You don't just remember who you are, you embody it. And as you do, you naturally inspire others to do the same. Without trying, without preaching, you become a living example of what it means to be whole and free. In the end, the journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the song that has been playing within you since the beginning of time. When you finally hear it, when you let it guide you, you realize that everything you've been searching for has been here all along, resonating quietly beneath the noise of the world. And with that realization comes a profound peace, a homecoming to yourself, and the deep knowing that you were never broken, never separate, never truly lost. 9. Seeing the truth in everything around you. There comes a quiet moment in your journey of remembrance when something subtle, yet profound, begins to shift. At first, it may seem like the world outside of you is the same people, the same places, the same challenges, but as you awaken, as you begin to remember who you truly are, a new layer of vision opens up. You start to see beneath the surface, beyond appearances, and into the essence of life itself. It's like realizing that you've been watching a play your entire life without knowing it was a play. For years, you were caught up in the story, believing every conflict, every heartbreak, every triumph was the ultimate truth. You identified so strongly with your role that you forgot you were also the actor. And even deeper still, the very stage on which the play was unfolding. But once you begin to remember, you see it clearly. The same consciousness, the same life force, expressing itself through countless forms. When this realization dawns, the world outside begins to change, not because it has actually changed, but because your perception has transformed. You notice how people and events reflect what is happening within you, like mirrors, showing you different aspects of your inner landscape. That difficult person at work is no longer just an obstacle. They become a teacher, showing you the unhealed wounds you still carry. The unexpected kindness of a stranger is no longer dismissed as luck. It feels like a direct message from the universe, reminding you that love is always present, even in the smallest gestures. One of the most humbling moments on this path is when you realize there are no true enemies. The people you once saw as opponents or threats are, in truth, expressions of the same source that lives within you. They may play a role that feels painful or challenging, but underneath, they are part of the same field of awareness, participating in the same great dance of life. It's like different waves rising and falling on the same ocean, unique in shape and movement, yet made of the same water. When you see this, something softens inside you. The need to fight, to prove, to defend begins to dissolve. You no longer feel compelled to hold tightly to old grudges or to protect an image of yourself at all costs. Instead, you begin to approach life with curiosity and openness. You see that every interaction, every challenge, is an opportunity to know yourself more deeply. I remember a time when I carried a heavy weight of resentment towards someone who had hurt me deeply. For years, I replayed the story in my mind, believing that if only they understood how wrong they were, I would finally find peace. But the peace never came. It was only when I turned inward and began to see my own pain reflected in them that something shifted. I realized they were not separate from me in the way I had imagined. Their actions came from their own wounds, just as my reactions came from mine. In that moment of understanding, the resentment dissolved not because what happened was okay, but because I no longer saw them as an enemy. I saw them as another wave on the same ocean. This doesn't mean you have to tolerate harm or stay in unhealthy situations. Seeing unity is not the same as allowing abuse. Boundaries are still important, perhaps even more so, when you understand how deeply connected we all are. But when you set a boundary from love rather than fear, it feels entirely different. It's no longer about rejecting someone. It's about honoring the truth of both your soul and theirs. As your perception shifts, even random events begin to feel purposeful. What once seemed like coincidence now appears as synchronicity, perfectly timed interactions and opportunities that guide you forward. It's as if life itself becomes a living friend, breathing conversation with you. A song on the radio carries exactly the message you needed to hear. A chance meeting opens the door to a new path. Even difficulties arrive with a strange sense of precision, offering lessons that help you grow. The more you see the world this way, the less you feel the urge to control it. You no longer need to force things to happen or resist what is unfolding. You realize that everything is part of a larger flow, and your role is simply to stay present and respond with clarity and love. This doesn't mean you become passive. On the contrary, you act with more strength and authenticity than ever before, but your actions arise naturally, like a dance rather than a battle. It's like standing in a river. When you fight against the current, you exhaust yourself and make little progress. But when you align with the flow, you are carried effortlessly toward where you need to be. Life becomes less about pushing and more about listening. You start to notice the subtle ways in which the universe communicates with you, guiding you not through force, but through resonance. This new way of seeing brings profound peace. Even in moments of chaos or pain, there's a quiet part of you that remains unshaken. You know that beneath the drama of the play, beneath the rise and fall of waves, there is only one consciousness, one life, one infinite being experiencing itself in countless forms. And because of this, you no longer need to search for meaning outside yourself. You no longer need to fight against what is. Instead, you can simply live, and in living, you love. Love, in this sense, is not a feeling you have to generate or earn. It's the natural expression of your being when you remember the truth of unity. It flows through you, effortlessly, touching everything and everyone you encounter. Even a glance, a kind word, a small act of presence can ripple outward in ways you may never fully see. In the end, seeing the truth in everything around you is not about escaping reality or pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about seeing reality more clearly than ever before. It's about recognizing that beneath the surface differences, beneath the stories we tell ourselves, there is only one great field of consciousness, endlessly playing, endlessly creating. And when you see this, the search ends, the struggle ends. You stop trying to fix or control life, and you begin to participate fully in it. You walk through the world with open eyes and an open heart, knowing that every face you meet is a reflection of your own. Every challenge is an invitation to return to love. And every moment, no matter how ordinary, is a doorway into the sacred truth that has always been here. There is no separation, only life, endlessly expressing itself as you. Returning to yourself awakening is often imagined as a final destination, a place you will someday reach after years of searching and striving. But the truth is far more simple, far more tender than that. Awakening is not about reaching something outside of you. It is not about climbing a spiritual mountain or earning some cosmic reward. Awakening is a homecoming. It is the soft, steady realization that you were never truly lost, only wandering in circles within your own mind. You do not need to run into the world to seek answers. You do not need to chase after teachers, books, or signs as though salvation were hiding somewhere beyond your reach. Everything you have been looking for has been quietly waiting inside you. From the very beginning, it has been whispering to you in the pauses between thoughts, in the stillness beneath the noise, in the spaces where you finally stop striving and simply breathe. When you remember your true nature, something profound begins to unfold. Your relationship with life itself changes. The fears that once gripped you so tightly begin to loosen their hold. The constant, anxious scanning of the future starts to fade, because you realize the future has never truly existed. There is only this moment, right here, right now, and you are this moment. You are the living presence in which time arises and falls away. With that knowing, the fear of the unknown dissolves. You no longer need to cling to control, because you are resting in what is unshakable. As this remembrance deepens, the endless chase for love also begins to quiet. You may have spent years, perhaps a lifetime, seeking love in others, in relationships, in approval, in validation. You may have built entire identities around being worthy of love or protecting yourself from the pain of losing it. But when you touch the truth of who you are, you see something extraordinary. You are love itself. It has never been separate from you. The love you have been searching for in every face, every embrace, every longing moment, has always been your own essence, shining through. And when you recognize this, you no longer run desperately after love, nor do you need to guard yourself against its loss. You simply allow it to flow through you. Like sunlight, through an open window, even your struggles with life begin to shift. The battles you fought, the conflicts you carried, the endless tug of war, with what is these two begin to dissolve. You see that life is not a war to be won or a puzzle to be solved. It is a dance of consciousness, endlessly creating, endlessly playing. The people who once seemed like adversaries are revealed as fellow dancers, playing their roles in the same grand choreography. The challenges that once felt like punishments are understood as invitations to grow, to see more clearly, to love more deeply. This does not mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you no longer fight against reality itself. You no longer resist the flow of life. Instead, you meet each moment with openness, curiosity, and compassion. You act when action is needed. You rest when rest is needed. And through it all, you remain anchored in the quiet knowing of your true self. At the heart of this journey lies a breathtaking realization. The universe is not outside of you. It has never been separate, never been out there somewhere for you to reach or control. The stars, the trees, the laughter of a friend, the tears of a stranger. These are not things you observe from a distance. They are expressions of the same infinite consciousness that you are. You are the universe, experiencing itself through the lens of your life. Every heartbeat, every thought, every breath is the universe meeting itself in an endless intimacy, embody. When this understanding dawns, there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to fix. You no longer need to strive to become something better, because you see that you have always been whole, even your imperfections, your mistakes, your wounds. They are part of the divine dance, part of the ever-changing expression of life itself. From this place of remembrance, the path forward becomes beautifully simple. You do not need to plan the entire journey or know how it will unfold. You need only make one choice, in this very moment, to return to yourself, to turn inward and rest in the quiet center of your being, to trust that everything you have been seeking has always been right here, waiting patiently for you to notice. Each breath you take becomes a reminder of this truth. Each step you walk becomes an act of devotion, a way of coming home again and again. Even the smallest moments, the way sunlight falls across the floor, the sound of rain against the window, the feeling of your own heartbeat becomes sacred when seen through the eyes of remembrance. And in this simple, living awareness, you begin to see that you have never truly been lost. The light you've been chasing has always been shining within you. The home you've been searching for has always been the stillness of your own presence. The love you've longed for has always been your own essence, waiting to be recognized. So let this be your starting point, not tomorrow, not someday in the distant future, but here, now, in this breath. Choose to return to yourself. Choose to be present, even for a single heartbeat. As you do, you will find that life itself begins to unfold as a gentle teacher, guiding you back to wholeness. From that moment on, every breath, every step, every glance becomes a quiet celebration of the truth you've always carried. You are the light. You have never been lost. You are, and have always been, home.